What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel, the site editor over at Dairyland Express, where we cover the Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and Badgers. I also have a new article out every Monday and Friday over at Cheesehead TV. And as it says at the bottom of the screen here, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So for today's episode, we're going to be discussing an article that I posted at Dairyland Express a few days ago. You can find the link at the bottom here. But it's about X Factors for the Green Bay Packers as they begin their playoff journey a little less than a week from now. So the reason that I enjoy these discussions, writing these types of articles, is because we can all have a slightly different definition of what an X Factor is and then which players fit into that X Factor bucket. So for me, we all know that the stars of this Green Bay Packers team, they have to perform in the playoffs if the Packers are going to make that Super Bowl run. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Kenny Clark, and others. We know that. But football's the ultimate team game, and it's going to take contributions from everyone, 1 through 53. And those players, the role players, the backup players in some instances, who can really leave their mark on the playoffs, who can step in and make those big contributions, those are my X factors. And for today's video, I have 5 of them that I would like to go through. So let's dive on in. First up, Josh Meyers, Green Bay Packers center. Now, I suppose we don't know for 100% certainty. Matt LaFleur keeps this information buttoned up as he should. We don't know what the exact configuration of Green Bay's offensive line is going to look like come the divisional round, but I'm under the assumption, we'll see if I'm right or wrong, but I'm under the assumption that one of the 5 is going to be Josh Meyers at center, just as he was in Week 18 against Detroit. So Meyers this season, he's shown a lot of promise, a lot of upside that he can be relied upon, even though he is a rookie. According to Pro Football Focus, he hasn't allowed a sack yet this season, just 7 pressures. Again, there's a lot to like about his game. Reason I have him as an X factor, however, is because he's a rookie who's missed most of his rookie season. He only has about 4.5 games of NFL experience under his belt. 4.5 games, to be exact, 293 snaps heading into the playoffs here. Other young offensive linemen, John Runyon, Royce Newman, they've been able to go through that learning curve, take some of their lumps during the regular season. We know once we get to the playoffs, and I know I'm going to mention this again, but weaknesses, mistakes in the playoffs are often magnified. And instances where you're able to overcome that during the regular season against a better opponent in a more high leverage situation, you might not be able to. So that's why I have Josh Meyers on this list, because of that inexperience. And he's going to likely play a key role on this Green Bay Packers team as they try to make their Super Bowl run moving forward. And having said that, it's not as if I have a major concern about the Green Bay Packers offensive line. In fact, we should be excited. They've held up incredibly well this year, despite the injuries, despite the movement, and they're getting healthier. Meyers is back. David Bakhtiari is back. Billy Turner is back at practice. So it's not as if I have this looming concern specifically about Meyers or about the offensive line in general. I don't. But the reason that he is my X factor is because, as I mentioned, those errors can be magnified. And for someone with only 293 snaps, 4.5 games of NFL experience now being thrown into the playoffs, chances are going to see some mistakes from Josh Meyers. That's just part of the learning experience and where he's at in his career. And so if he can limit those or mitigate the level or how big the error is, that's going to be a huge boost for this Green Bay Packers offensive line. So he is my first X factor. Next up, number 2, Mason Crosby and the field goal unit in general. Again, weaknesses are magnifying. The Green Bay Packers have been able to overcome missed field goals for the most part. They've been able to overcome, for the most part, missed extra points this season as well. Well, we can point to a few games where Mason Crosby, the field goal unit, may have cost them. The Kansas City Chiefs game, Green Bay lost 13-7. Mason Crosby missed 2 field goals in that game. Against Minnesota, Week 11, when Green Bay lost by 3, Mason Crosby missed a field goal that week. In the Cincinnati game, Green Bay ended up winning, but they absolutely shouldn't have. A number of missed field goals very well could have cost Green Bay that game as well. Now, I'm not sitting here saying the Chiefs game, the Vikings game specifically, had those field goals been hit, they would have been tied games. Who knows? Maybe the Packers still end up losing. but they could have won as well. And in the playoffs, when you're up against Dallas, you're up against Tampa Bay, the Rams, whoever Green Bay ends up facing, that missed field goal, that missed extra point could absolutely be the difference between a win and a loss. We've already seen that during the regular season. As I mentioned, things are kicked up several notches once the playoffs begin. Mason Crosby, he's 25 of 34 this season. And while not all of the misses are on him by any means, early on, especially, that Bengals game is a prime example. The blocking of this field goal unit was atrocious. We've seen poor snaps, bad holds. But again, at the end of the day, Mason Crosby's the one kicking the field goals. And although 100% of those misses aren't directly on him, he's still the kicker, and some of those misses were. Now, the good news, this whole operation has been better really since the bye week. The blocking over the course of the season has improved. And since the bye week, Mason Crosby's missed only one kick, and it was an extra point against the Detroit Lions. Other than that, and there's been some questionable holds and snaps along the way, but overall the operation has been successful. So that's the positive in this. But the field goal unit, the special teams unit in general, and not necessarily a group or a unit that we can fully put our trust in saying that, all right, they're solved, they're going to be good to go. There still is that overhanging question mark. And again, a missed field goal, a missed extra point in the playoffs could absolutely be the difference between a win and a loss. So next up, our third X factor, Darnell Savage. So the safety position within Joe Barry's defense, they're asked to do a lot. They have to be reliable tacklers and very involved in the run game. So Joe Barry plays with these light boxes where it's a defensive front, a linebacker. So the safeties, they play an important role in slowing the run game, but as well, their job is to limit the big play. In that cover two shell that Green Bay plays a lot, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, their job is to be there over the top to provide the cornerbacks with help, as well as to prevent the big play from happening. Adrian Amos, he's steady Eddie, man. He is one of the most reliable, steady safeties in all of football, and someone who's very underrated around the league. Darnell Savage, I feel like this has flown a bit under the radar this season, but he's had a very up and down year. And I think it's safe to say that there's been more downs than there have been ups. So by Pro Football Focus's grading system, Savage ranks 69th out of 98 eligible safeties. Andy Herman of Packer Report, I mentioned his grading system in the last video talking about the edge rushers. But what he does is he goes through and grades each play for each player over the course of the season. If it's a neutral play, the player gets a 0. If it's a positive, anywhere from 0 to 2, it can range on that scale. And if it's a negative play, anywhere from 0 to -2, they can range. And that's added up over the course of the game, over the course of the season. While by Andy's grading scale, Darnell Savage is actually the Packers' second lowest graded defender this season. He has a grade of -4.35. This was through week 17, so the Lions game is not taken into consideration. But the only defender graded worse than him is Jonathan Garvin. So between that, the Pro Football Focus, it paints a picture for us that what I'm sure most of our eyes are telling us, that it hasn't been a very good season for Darnell Savage. Now, with that said, the Green Bay defense has still been very good at limiting the big play. By Sharp Football's explosive pass play rate, the Packers rank 5th. And in terms of tackling, Savage actually has the fewest missed tackles of his career this season. There's certainly been positives, but if he can provide a more reliable defender over the middle, specifically in coverage, that's where the issues have really been this season, as well as show some of that playmaking ability. That's just not something we see. He had several opportunities in week 11 on the road against Minnesota to come away with interceptions, and he just couldn't. If he can snag one of those interceptions, if he can provide a little bit more reliability and coverage over the middle of the field, it's going to do wonders for this Green Bay secondary and this Green Bay Packers defense as a whole. So next up, X factor number 4, Josiah Garcia. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence. This isn't the entire reason by any means, but over the last 7 games since week 11 against the Vikings, Aaron Rodgers has been on an absolute tear. 72% completion percentage, 20 touchdowns, no interceptions, 124.4 passer rating. That was also the time that we started to see, and again, this isn't the sole reason, but we started to see some steady production in the passing game from the tight ends. Not just Agora, but Tyler Davis has even gotten in on it. Mercedes Lewis as well. Again, that's not the sole reason for Rodgers' success, But I think the tight ends being a factor in the passing game, finding their groove after Robert Tonyan was ruled out for the season against Arizona, I do think that that's helped provide a boost to this Green Bay Packers passing game. So DeGuara, specifically over the last 7 games, he's caught 17 of his 23 targets for 192 yards. He also had that 62-yard catch and run against Detroit for a touchdown. Now, it hasn't been all roses, I should say. There was that drop in the end zone against Minnesota. It's had a couple other miscues as well. So certainly still room for improvement. But the reason that he's my X factor is, one, because he's been the biggest or the number one targeted tight end on this team since Robert Tonyan went down. And again, making that connection with the offense's success when the tight end started to thrive a little bit in the passing game. They do play an important part to the success of the offense, specifically the passing game, even though Green Bay has their running backs to lean on, Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, hopefully when he comes back, MVS. The tight ends still play an important part of this offense and in the passing game. So having that added element, I think, can really provide a boost to the offense and the passing game in general. On top of that, DeGuara's versatility and just what he brings to the offense in that regard. So the illusion of complexity. I'm sure you've heard Matt LaFleur talk about that before. It's a term that he will often use. And really what it means is it's keeping the defense off balance. So it's running the same play, but from a variety of formations, or it's having like plays that start out looking similar, but they end up differently. Again, trying to keep the defense guessing and off balance with what the offense is going to do. So DeGuara, and in order to do that successfully, you need versatility, which DeGuara brings. Can line up in the backfield, in line, in the slot, out wide. We just talked about the impact he's made as a pass catcher. He's also been a solid blocker as well. So when you have a player like Josiah DeGuara who has the defense's attention and you don't know where he's lining up, is he going to block on that play? Is he going to be a pass catcher on that play? It really helps Matt LaFleur and this offense achieve that illusion of complexity that he talks about, keeping defenses guessing and off balance. Now, again, DeGuara is just a piece of that puzzle. He's not the sole reason for that success. He's not the sole reason if there's any sort of failure either. But if he's on the field and the defense, he can affect the game as a pass catcher, but also without the ball in his hands either, just depending on how he's utilized, where he's lined up, and what his responsibilities are. So given those two factors in particular, that's why I think he's an X factor and can have a big impact on the offense and what Green Bay does in the playoffs. Lastly, final X factor, Big Dean Lowry. So as Jerry Montgomery said, Packers interior defensive line coach, Dean Lowry is not someone who's going to fill a stat sheet. He does, as Montgomery put it, the dirty work. Takes on double teams, occupies space. However, this year, we've actually seen Dean Lowry filling the stat sheet. He finished the year with 42 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. That's a career high, as are his 6 sacks. And his 42 pressures, I believe, are actually tied for 15th among all interior defensive linemen. For some perspective, over 2019 and 2020 combined, Lowry totaled 42 pressures and had just 3 sacks. So it shows you how productive he's been this season. Before the year began, he talked about how he really enjoyed the freedom of Joe Barry's defense and his ability to move around more to find those one-on-one matchups. So that could be one reason behind his success. But also, it's like Dean just flipped a switch, because once or twice a week, really since week 5, week 6, it feels like we've seen him just use that strength of his and just bulldoze his way into the backfield and blowing up a play. And the reason that he's my X factor is because when Dean's playing well, if Dean's playing at a high level, everybody benefits. When Dean's playing well, it gives the Packers the freedom to move Kenny Clark around more. So in previous years, Kenny Clark has a lot of times lined up in the A gap and been the nose tackle, mostly out of necessity. But this year, Clark actually took his fewest snaps in the A gap or over the center and his most out over the tackle. And with that, he produced 64 pressures, 4th most amongst interior defensive linemen, 2nd most of his career. Now, again, I keep going back to this, but Dean Lowry is not the sole reason for that. That's part of Joe Barry's defense as well. But when you have a productive Dean Lowry, it allows you the confidence and the freedom to move Clark around more. So if Dean's playing well, you're able to find Clark those one-on-one matchups. And as we all know, Kenny Clark one-on-one oftentimes is going to end in a victory for Kenny Clark. On top of that, Dean Lowry, he's a space eater. He occupies double teams. But when he's doing that, that benefits the edge rushers. That benefits the linebackers behind him, keeping them clean. And then when he bulldozes his way into the backfield, whether it's a run or a pass, the absolute best way to destroy any play in football quickly is interior pressure. So when he does that, the secondary is going to benefit. So Dean Lowry is my X factor because, as we all know, Kenny Clark still needs help. As good as he is, and a lot of times this season, Lowry's been able to provide that. But when he's doing that, when he's providing that, it's not just Clark who benefits. It's the edge rushers, the linebackers, and the secondary as well. So he is my fifth and final X factor. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Feel free to comment below with who your X factors are. Find me on Twitter, Paul_Brettel. Let me know there as well. You can find the article version of this below or at Dairyland Express. Check out my work there as well as at Cheesehead TV. And as always, friends, I appreciate you tuning in. I truly do. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Take care, stay safe, and go Pack Go.